So, before I speak out about another negative experience that I had um, on a flight, I wanted to mention something positive. It's probably one of my favorite flights ever. I was going from Turkey to Chicago, and I don't know the names of the specific planes, but it was a huge plane. It had like three, and then in the middle four, and then on the other side three. So it's a humongous plane, and oh god, it had to sit hundreds of people, and it was pretty full too. But I kept looking over at these three empty seats because I was in the middle with the four seats, and they were empty, and I couldn't believe it. On a full plane, that there could be three empty seats right next to me. Maybe it was a family that missed a flight or something. I don't know. But I kept expecting that eventually somebody or a group of people would come and take those seats. Um, and I kind of closed my eyes and fell asleep. And kind of waited for the plane to take off, kind of relax. And as the plane was up in the air and flying, I looked over and I couldn't believe there were still three seats. So as soon as I felt comfortable, for an hour I was thinking, should I? And I ended up lying down in all four seats. And the first time that the Turkish airline employees, came by, the stewardess, I was like, oh God, they're going to tell me to sit up. But they just looked at me and kind of smiled and didn't say anything. And it's pretty sweet going from Turkey all the way to Chicago, having four seats to yourself. They didn't care that I did that. You never know. Some people are uptight. They might have some weird rule. I mean, technically, you're supposed to turn off your tablets when you're on the flight, but technically, it doesn't interfere with anything. It's just a weird rule. I think it's maybe in place in case they get some kind of sudden turbulence and you lose your electronic, but it could be a projectile or something. But otherwise, it doesn't interfere with, what the pilot is doing. It's kind of a weird myth that's been perpetuated for a long time. But anyways, had a very nice flight, landed in Chicago, and then just waited and waited and waited. I had probably 3 hours to connect from Chicago to Washington, D.C. So at first I'm like, okay, an hour goes by, and probably for at least 2 hours we're just waiting on the runway. Chicago O'Hare Airport is very big. I had never been there, so I was very nervous. And as I was running through it, I realized how nervous it was, and had to go back through um, security check-in. And I don't remember the exact time frame, but at this point I had like, I don't know, we must have been sitting on the runway for a long time because like by the time I got to security checkpoint, huge line. I have maybe 20 minutes. I go to the front. I ask the agent, hey, can you please let me get to the front? The last call, they're going to close the gate very soon. I need to get back to DC. No, I can't let you skip the line. I couldn't believe it. I guess they have some weird protocol, or they're not allowed to. I don't understand the reason why, but hey, people are in a hurry. He said, you're gonna have to. And then I asked somebody else, and that person said, you're gonna have to ask all the people ahead of you if you can cut one by one. This was really hard for me. I couldn't imagine how all these people would just let me cut ahead. But each person I explained very quickly, hey, my flight to DC, I have a connection, I'm gonna miss it. Can I please get ahead of you? Eventually, people started hearing me, and okay, yeah, go ahead, good luck, catch your flight, hope you catch it. It still took some time though, because it's a long line, you still have to talk to a lot of people to get to the front. Maybe by the time I got to the front, I don't know. I really, it's the story's a little bit blurry. I mean, maybe I had 30 minutes when I was at the back, and by the time I got to the front, I had 10 minutes or less until the final boarding, until the gate closed. Um, so I go through, I check my baggage, and of course, the only time they ever pull my baggage aside is this instance. And I mean, I might sound like somebody who's new to flying, but I've flown to probably about 30 countries, and in many of those countries, I've flown inside of it. I've had hundreds of flights. I've been kind of lucky actually, but this was like the first time that I've been pulled aside for my baggage to be checked again. I admit I looked like I was in a hurry, but come on, of course you're going to be in a hurry. You're trying to connect you're trying to connect. You want to get home. So he pulls my bag aside. I'm gonna have you open it, please, and I have to check my. He has to check my laptop and everything that's inside the bag, and I think that's done, and I grab it quickly. He's like, "Hold up a second," and he gives me the pat down. And bear in mind, this is in 2000. When did I fly to Turkey? God, maybe 2011, 2012. Um, yeah, but I guess the time doesn't matter. But yeah, he gives me a pat down, and I'm like, hey, come on, man. I mean, you've checked my bag. I've gone through the scanner. I need to catch my flight. And I say it as politely as possible, but obviously sounding like I'm in a rush because obviously I am. And he says, and I can't believe the audacity. I can't believe how rude he was. He's a scrawny little guy, and I'm 6'1", I'm 187 centimeters. Um, I mean, I guess the size doesn't matter, but it's just he's this super scrawny guy. I could have, I was so pissed. He says, I can make this go as long as I want. And I'm like, oh my God. So he actually does take his time. And finally, this asshole lets me go. But by the time I actually reach the gate, from the security check-in to the gate, I'm a long distance runner. I've run 30 kilometers, 18 miles. I can run. Um, but I mean, I guess I didn't understand the layout of the airport. There's tons of people. This is like late May, early June, so it's a busy travel season. Um, I guess there's a long way to go depending on the gate, and of course, it was probably the furthest one away from the security check in. I couldn't have really planned for that. I mean, it was kind of a mess, but by the time I get to the gate, it's closed. So now I'm kind of fighting against time because I want to get back to Washington in time to catch the metro. What am I going to do? I mean, I don't like paying for taxis in Washington. They're very expensive, Washington, D.C. Um, so I get in line. I don't know if it was still Turkish Airlines at this point or if I transferred to American Airlines or what it was. I really honestly don't remember. Um, but I get in line, and eventually, after 30 minutes of waiting, thank God they're very understanding. They put me on the very next flight out of Chicago to DC. They didn't question, they didn't ask why I missed my flight. Maybe they knew that this Turkish Airlines flight was on the runway for, God, I mean, honestly, I don't remember. It felt like forever. I know it was like a 3 hour um, time between the connecting flight. It was at least 2 hours. But, anyways, they're very understanding. I get on the flight. Luckily, there's a few seats empty still, so I got one of the last flight seats, but it's not a very well. I imagine it must actually be a very popular flight, like between Chicago and DC. But maybe I lucked out that day. I don't know. But luckily, I land in Washington D.C. And get literally one of the last metros from the airport to Metro Center, and literally the very last metro on the red line because I lived in Woodley Park, going from Metro Center to Woodley Park, and at that point I was just happy to be home. It was a pleasant walk through from the metro to Cathedral Avenue, very lovely area. Anyways, it was nice to be home, but really what shocked me was just the audacity of this TSA agent. Should have been there. If you had heard it, you would have been shocked how rude he was, how disrespectful, and just kind of abusing his power. And really, in all the times that I've flown, it's really the only, other than this other video I made about Viva Colombia in Medellin, really the only other negative flight experience. I've been quite lucky. I've had very few delays. Um, Only one missed flight, which was Chicago to DC, and only one canceled flight in. Yeah, I've been to 30 countries. I mean, Asia, Africa, South America, Europe, flown inside countries many times, like domestic flights within many countries, and really feel blessed to have been so lucky. But just wanted to state that second experience, which was really the second and only other bad experience I had. Um, and I hope that this luck continues with these flights that, you know, don't often face delays. But I really had to talk about that experience because I couldn't believe it. The Chicago airport did very little to kind of rectify the situation. I did file a complaint. Just very rude, padding everywhere, and literally everywhere. I don't know if he was using this job as an excuse to do something else. I have nothing against people who swing that way, but I don't know, it felt very uncomfortable too. Um, but I guess even if you're in a hurry, you're not allowed to look like you're in a hurry. You have to just kind of go with the flow. And I learned my lesson there. And, um, you know, I experienced at least 5 years of painless flights until that Viva Colombia thing. Luckily, there's Wingo, which is a new low cost company that's literally just come out. So that will be good. Viva Colombia needs the competition, and they have Easy Fly and a few others. Um, I have some traveling coming up. I look forward to that and going to think positive. But I just wanted to share that experience. It looks like this paper is covering the video a little bit. Sorry. And that's my story.